Once upon a time there was a beautiful garden that was owned by an ugly and unfriendly giant. It was a truly lovely spot. The flowers bloomed, the fruit trees always seemed to have springtime blossoms, and the birds sang in the trees. Each day after school, the children came and played games in the giant's garden. One day the giant, who'd been away for a very long time visiting his friend the ogre, who lived in Carlisle Castle, returned to his home and his garden. He grew angry when he observed the children playing in his garden. "This is my garden," he shouted, and the children ran away in fear. Immediately the giant hung a huge sign which read, "Keep out, or else," and then he hurriedly built a wall around his garden. Now the children had nowhere to play. They tried to play in the street, but they found it was too dangerous, with all the traffic being diverted from the Western Highway, all taking a detour through Bungaree. The giant was selfish. He was not open to the beauty that the children brought. Meanwhile, spring came to the land, but not to the giant's garden. The birds didn't come and sing, and the trees refused to blossom. One little flower popped its head up above the earth, but when it read the sign and saw no children in the garden, it quickly slipped back down beneath the ground. The snow and the frost were the only ones who were happy about the situation. "Spring has forgotten this place," they shouted. The snow covered the ground and the frost turned everything else white. The giant could not understand why spring had not come to his garden. He was sad and confused. Outside the garden the spring came and went, but not in the giant's garden. Outside summer passed and autumn came, but the garden was always in winter. One day the giant awoke to the song of a bird. He looked out through his window, and there he saw quite a wonderful sight. The children had crawled through a small opening in the garden wall, and they were playing there again in his garden. The trees had turned red and orange in autumn glory. The flowers were all in bloom, and the birds were flying around the garden as they sang. But in one small corner of the garden, which was still shrouded in winter, the small boy was trying to climb a tree, unsuccessfully. The giant bounded down the steps and ran into the garden. At first the children were afraid, but now the giant had a smile on his face. He walked across the garden to the little boy. He picked him up and placed him on the branch of the tree. Instantly the trees started blossoms, and the birds sang in all of its branches. The boy was overjoyed, and he hugged the giant. The giant said, "I've been so selfish. Now I know why spring never came to my garden." From that time on, the children played every day in the garden. The giant was kind to the children, especially the boy that he'd lifted into the tree. But although the children came back daily, the little boy did not return. Over many years, the giant grew old and very weak. One day he looked out through his window, and there was the little boy. He hurried downstairs as fast as he was able, and he walked over to the boy who stood in his garden. But when the giant came close to the boy grew very angry. The boy's hands were red, and there were big nail marks in them, and so too were his feet. "Who has done this?" asked the giant. "Tell me, and I will slay him." "No," said the boy. "These are wounds of love." "Who are you?" asked the giant. And the boy could only respond, "Years ago you allowed me to play in your garden, but today I will take you to a garden of mine in paradise." That afternoon, when the children came to play in the garden, they found the big giant lying dead, but he was all covered with beautiful flowers and white blossom. This story from Oscar Wilde that he wrote for his children, called The Selfish Giant, tells us of one who learned that a selfish attitude towards the things of the world keeps the joy and love of God far away. Today, the parable of the rich fool presents us with a similar message. This podcast, produced by St Dunstan's House Press, is a special presentation for the children at Bungaree. Narrated and produced by Kevin Harper.